Is Sweden a religious country? That's coming up. What's going on? Andrew coming at you, and I thought in this one it would be interesting to talk about religion in Sweden. Is it a religious country? How do I see it? And first, talking about where I come from the United States, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, which I consider Pennsylvania to be a pretty religious country, a religious state. I was raised Presbyterian. And was raised around the church and things like that. And coming to Sweden, I really feel like overall Sweden is not a religious country. However, I don't feel like people are overly like anti-religious. It's just a subject that doesn't get talked about so much. So I don't think I've ever really heard people talk about religion here in Sweden. I think there's been a few occasions maybe where I've walked around the city and actually seen somebody preaching. That being said, though, the churches here in Sweden are very, very beautiful. And one interesting architectural thing I've noticed in a lot of European cities is that the church tends up being one of the tallest buildings. And so in Linköping, for where I'm from, the church here is central to everything I really do, because we have two churches. We have St. Lars and we have Domkyrka. And Domkyrka, the church, when you take a look at it, it's like how you navigate through the whole city. So I just think it's interesting. It's like, even though Sweden is not a religious country, you look at the church constantly if you're trying to figure out your direction here. At least I do when I'm in Linköping trying to figure out if I'm going central. All you got to do is follow the church. And I'm sure that's the same in a lot of areas in Stockholm. I think Stockholm is very beautiful. When I take a look there, there's a lot of Swedish churches there. Interesting thing too is that in Sweden, culturally, even though it's not a very religious country, the taxes, if you don't opt out of it, your taxes automatically go to the church. I think it's like 1%. And so I just find it interesting for a country that's not religious, and it also has a lot of religion still there where people don't mind so much. So a lot of people, for example, will have baptism there or communion there. I believe that's a big thing here in Sweden, where they get old enough and they're in the church and they can get some money and things like that. It's a big thing. There's also weddings and things like that, although I hear now it's more trendy to maybe have your weddings done in a law office or somewhere that's not a religious place. But it's interesting. I sang in a choir here in Sweden for a long time. Actually, I don't know how many people know that of my subscribers. So I was at the church a lot. I pay the church tax personally, and I was in a lot of church services here in Sweden, and I just never really saw a lot of people in the audience. Every once in a while I would, for Christmas and for concerts and things like that I did with my choir. There was a lot of people. But a lot of times it seems like the church is kind of hurting. I actually think it's cool that they pay the 1% tax here, that a lot of people pay it, because I think that the architecture is really beautiful, and I think that the churches need to be taken care of. There's a lot of history here with the churches. I thought my church was cool in the States because it was like 220 years old. But you look at churches that are hundreds of years old, and there's just so much history here. Also, a lot of interesting things is holidays here in Sweden are all based around religion. There's texts that are religious. So if you think about it, Lucia, it's not really religious, but it is when you look at how the holiday is kind of celebrated it. So a lot of the holidays here in Sweden are either pagan religions or they are Christian religions. And in the States nowadays, we'll say like Merry Christmas. Instead of saying Merry Christmas, we'll say like Happy Holidays. And I think that's because probably the States are still more multicultural than Sweden is, just simply because we're so much bigger and vast that's why we've kind of adapted and changed to that. But like in Sweden, for a country that's not religious, you have a lot of religious holidays, and you just call them like Yule, like, or Christmas, or you call Easter, and you have it based around that, where like we'll call our Easter break in the United States now like spring break and things like that. So all in all, I think it's fascinating here, Sweden's relationship with religion, because it's a country where I would say it's mostly probably full of people that don't believe in God, but they're not like openly atheists. They're not against religion here in Sweden. They're still around it. It's just not a central thing in their lives, and it's also a more private thing. So there could be a lot of people in Sweden that are religious, but I just don't see it. But compared to the United States, completely not. But I think that's a trend probably in societies in general, are probably a lot less, I would say, evangelical than they are. Than they were. Even in the United States, I kind of feel like people are becoming a lot less religious, or when I say religious, like maybe hardcore religious and things like that, and just kind of, keep a lot of the Christian tradition. So in the end, Sweden is pretty much it's not an anti-religious country. It's just not that religious to begin with. but the church is still involved in some activities that people do. They go to the churches. They still celebrate all the Christian holidays. And you'll still maybe sing songs about Jesus and God in school somewhat, and all of that's fine. They don't have like the kind of separation of church and state like we have, but people don't see it in the same way. They just see it as a traditional thing. So I hope you guys found this one interesting. I haven't uploaded in a little while. I'll do a video to talk about that here in the future, but if you like that one, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, would love to have you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey-do!